So this is 1010, and I was when I was talking earlier, and I was saying about after you got done watching the video, guys, that she would come on and then she would give her testimony of what happened to her and how her alien experience actually was connected to my experience with the Draconian, and what helped me understand that it was Draconian was because of the connection between me and her that later took place, like literally almost 4 years later. So go ahead, 1010, and talk about everything that happened to you and your alien experience, both experiences too.
Okay. Normally my experiences happened at night when I'm sleeping, but during these particular experiences, I could tell the difference between being asleep and being awake. My first experience was I was in my bed and I went to sleep that night, and what I thought was a dream, but it seemed too real. I was laying on a mat in a room, and catty corner from me I could see someone laying down, some type of entity on top of them, and this entity had a tail. Before I would say that what was encasing this person was ribs, it looked like ribs. I really didn't know how to explain what I saw. This is something I'd never seen before, but it was actually wings, was what I was looking at. So while I'm looking at this person, initially, like I said, I was lying flat, and then I was standing up, and there was another entity standing next to me. I didn't feel intimidated or scared or anything like that, but when I first was watching this person, I guess, be overtaken by this entity, it was a lot to take in. I had a lot of mixed feelings about it because at first I just didn't know what I was looking at.
So you said you were laying there on this floor, and then you looked over and you saw this other being on top of a human, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't explain this before in my videos, but I'm going to go ahead and say this now because most people may not know this, besides people who have been in my school, that school always had one light on. So there was always, where I slept at, there was always a light that was it was dim, but it was a light because I had those halogen lights in the ceiling. So there was always one light on. So when you looked over there, it couldn't have been a completely dark room, right? Because you wouldn't have been able to see. And anybody who knows that school and knows anything, and people who are listening now who know me and know my school, they know that there's always that light on, which is another thing too, that when you're saying, hey, you were in this room, there's a person, you were laying down, and then there's a person who's laying down on the floor, and there was a being on top of them, you could see them. Well, yeah, there was a light on in my school. So when you first started telling me about your alien experience, because when we first started talking, and you said you felt like you had some kind of connections to me, we were trying to figure it out, but it really wasn't like a urgent thing. It just was over like the period of a few weeks, we started really piecing things together, and I said, oh my gosh, you said that this thing had a tail, right? And then and my reaction was big to that, right? It was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, because it explained what those marks on the door frame were and on the inside of the wall, because I never could understand what those marks were until you said it was a tail. I always thought it was maybe a finger or a horn, but none of those things made sense, but the tail makes sense. And then you said that it looked like there was ribs encased around the person.
Right.
And that kind of wigged you out, freaked you out a little bit, right? So talk about that. Talk about how bizarre it kind of looked, and talk about what the tail was actually doing.
It looked like the tail was touching this person's head. Whatever it was doing to me, it looked very invasive, and it felt very invasive. It's very hard for me to express what I actually saw because I've never seen anything like it before. Looking back on that and the feelings that I had during that time, yeah, I was a little bit frightened, for that person, because my mind is limited and my experiences with this, obviously I have no experience with that. So trying to piece things together and keeping this memory with me, because I knew that it was important, because it felt so real. In the moment when I was standing there with another entity, I never looked over at them, but I felt comfortable with them. And this entity was quite large, but I didn't feel scared or anything standing with them. But I do remember one conversation that we had, X, where...
So when you were laying there, and you said that, you know, it seemed very weird because you saw like these ribs that were encased around the person, and then later on me and you started talking more and started understanding about the draconians and stuff, because I figured it was reptilian because of the feet, the footprints in my school. And then when you told me there was a tail that was going, and you said where you just left off as you were talking about how the tail looked like it was being very invasive. So was the tail actually going inside of the person's head, or was it just kind of like rolling around on the person's head? What exactly was happening?
From where I was, first started out laying there, and then found myself standing next to this other entity, and then seeing this human with this entity on top of them. It looked like the tail was kind of like whipping a little bit, but the tail was definitely looked like it was inside the person's brain, if that makes any sense. Just whatever happened, it just looked very, it just looked really invasive. And the fact that initially I thought that it was ribs encasing this person's body, it was actually wings. The more we talked about draconians and reptilians, because I'm not really familiar with certain things like this. This is something that's new for me. And why I was there, what I saw always perplexed me, and I kept that experience to myself because I really didn't have any evidence of it actually happening. But when I was there, it felt real to me. And then just kind of like taking it all in. When people have experiences like this, if they ever do, some people can articulate it. And for me, it was difficult, and still at times is difficult to articulate exactly what I saw. Like if I could have somebody tap into my brain and pull the information out so that I could show them exactly what I saw, that would be really beneficial for me. But there was another instance of an experience.
So the other being that was standing next to you, that you felt like that being brought you there to witness this event happening. What did that being look like? And is that the same being that you had in another experience that you had before that you were talking about?
Yes, so you want me to talk about the previous experience and then go back to that being?
Sure.
I was laying in my bed and something woke me up, and my body was not paralyzed, kind of like when you get sleep paralysis, but my mind and my ability to perceive what was happening around me, I was very much awake. And I saw this giant entity in front of me. I'm a tall person, and this being made me feel very small, very almost childlike in comparison to their stature, and an imposing and intimidating force. I didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me, or I know some people think that aliens come and they want to have like intimate relations with the person that they're watching or whatever, but I didn't really know why it was there. And when it would breathe, because its rib cage was so large, it sounded like a giant animal. I go back to Jurassic Park. So if anybody's familiar with Jurassic Park, there's a scene where there's a triceratops, and it's sick, and it's breathing, and it's kind of labored a little bit, and it's taking deep breaths, and that's kind of like how it sounded to me at that point. There wasn't a lot of interaction between us. This time frame was probably really short, but it felt like a long time. And initially, I was frightened by what I saw or whom I saw, and I just fell back asleep. I think I passed out from maybe fright, or it wanted me to go back to sleep at that point.
Did you?
But I do believe. Yeah, go ahead.
Did it have hair? Did it have scales? Did it have, or was it just like you couldn't make out what exactly this being looked like?
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't think it had hair. At first I thought it was beast-like, but it was kind of difficult to see in the dark. The only thing that I could really say is by its sheer size alone, it had to be dark-colored. I just don't know what color it would be. But yeah, as I could remember the outline of its body. It's possible that it has wings, but I didn't really see them. But I could definitely remember just how imposing
It was, it was just
figure it had.
yeah, it was just a big, massive being, and you didn't,
Yes.
you weren't, yeah, okay, so then when you were in this school, because we now know that you're definitely in the karate school, that it was it the same being that brought you there? You feel like it was the same thing?
I think so, yeah. I think so, because the entity I was standing next to, I'm guessing that was my original, and this is just my observation, that maybe that was my original introduction to this entity, and we probably had more interactions. I'm guessing for me to become comfortable with it, because at a point, like I said, when I was at the school, I was standing next to this entity, and it was very large, and I did not feel scared. I didn't feel nervous or anything like that. I felt like, okay, you know, you obviously want me to see something. And there was, I don't want to say it was like comfortable, but I wouldn't say that I felt nervous, or I was just there with it. Like, you know, there was an understanding. But I would say what I was watching happen to the human with the entity that was on top of, you know, it was a little bit disturbing and initially, until I started talking to you, you know, like watching your videos, because I think a lot of times as humans, and this for me, there's things that we don't understand. So our initial response is fear, because we can't conceptualize what exactly it is that we're looking at, and we just have this preconceived notion that, oh, this must be doing evil to this person. And in essence, it wasn't doing that to you at all.
No, and in fact, if it did not leave the marks on the floor, I wouldn't have understood it was reptilian. If it did not leave the marks on the wall, then my and your connection may not have been as strong, because when I never knew what the hell those marks on the wall, could not figure out where they came from, but then when you said a tail, that was like, it was like, bingo, here we go, this is what it was. You know, you didn't say that it was a tail that left the marks on the wall, you just said that this thing had a tail, and it was like doing this thing to this person's head, and I know that my mind was unlocked, so that's how it was doing it, and the marks on the wall tells me that most likely that this entity probably has some type of substance or something that oozes from the tail. That's what I'm guessing. And that substance that's oozing from the tail, or it brought it from whatever dimension it came from, brought that through with it. It purposely slapped that on the wall so that way I would trust you later on. Because what happened was, between me and you, when we first started talking, we started noticing not only did we have a lot of things that were very similar about each other, like that was just really, really similar in very weird ways, right? But we also started noticing that we were starting to share thoughts, which is very weird, like mind, like reading each other's minds, that we were actually sharing thoughts. And like there's been quite a few times that, like, right before I go to text you or I go to say something, boom, you automatically text me or text me exactly what I was about to tell you. And I'm like, that's just crazy. And I'm pretty sure that's happened on your side as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what pretty much that was like the first thing, the first step. And then I started looking more into your alien experience, and then that's what opened everything up, and we're just like, okay, there's definitely something going on here, right?
Right. And I'm very similar to you, obviously, in the way I had no evidence of, you know, no physical evidence. What happened, me seeing what happened to you, would really only make sense to you. And that's really technically all that matters, because of the experience that I had. I was actually present, but at a different point of time, which is interesting. It was like I was going in the past to see what happened to you. So like your experience happened in 2017, and when I saw you, it was 2019 or 2020, around that time, when I actually was present to see that happen to you. But if I would have seen it beforehand, I don't think we would have had the same result, if that makes sense. I probably would have chalked it up as a dream, or, you know, the timing had to be just right for me to push forward, because you hadn't really, you made your channel, you know, you had it up for like a year before I found it.
Yeah, January 1st, 2020 was the first video.
And if your channel, if I would have been there in 2017 or 2018 or the beginning of 2019, none of this would have, it wouldn't have formulated perfectly.
Like what happened when we went out to Utah and we went to go find this portal, because I said, hey, I am driven there, and I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be there too, because the way things had happened. And when we got out there, and on our third day, I looked at you and I said, "You're the navigator. You are supposed to find the way in." And you immediately, well, the first thing you said was, "Oh, okay, the pressure's on." And then you pulled up your phone, and perfectly at that timing, at that moment. So everything that led up all the way from 2017 and then into 2019 with you being there, and all the way until 2021 with, well, actually at the end of 2020 when you started coming into videos, because you didn't actually come start watching my videos until like towards the end of 2020. That's around the time you subscribed. And then in 2021, we went out to Utah, and that perfectly set everything up in place for you to pull out that phone at that very moment and confirm that the Alcor star, the Bear constellation, was right there on that rock at that very moment. It's 1,000,000,001 chances that would possibly happen. And you have the Alcor constellation on your arm, and there's a bear in the cave, and there's just no way that any of those things all perfectly came. So we know that we're definitely connected, that we're both supposed to have been there at that point in time. And that's one of the reasons why you were there in the school the night that with the thing happened to me, and everything happened the way it happened.
And here we are now.
Yeah, here we are now. And so if I was to ask, if anybody was to ask people who are close to you that know you, would they say that you're a ghost chaser, you're a UFO watcher, you're the type of person who loves to get into scary movies or anything like that? What would they say about your character?
Oh, no. Now, they know that I like to think outside the box when it comes to what normal people call conspiracy theories. They know that I have a different way of looking at information. I don't like to just take what everybody gives me as word. I like to research it and make sure that it's right. But when it comes to like UFO scary, I don't like scary movies. I don't like being scared. They would be like, no, Eileen doesn't, I didn't even, and this might sound, I didn't even know Draconians were a thing until I started talking with X. I knew about the Anunnaki because of their connection to certain things, like the Bible and such. And that
you're not a UFO watcher, though.
No, I'm not.
Like you don't go out and look for UFOs. You don't go looking for Bigfoot.
No.
You're not the type of person to show up at alien conferences and stuff before all this thing happened. Like you just really was not into it. Like your mind was kind of like, okay, there's a possibility these things are there, but you were not actively seeking those things.
No, not at all.
And that's what people would say about you, that no, she's just not into, she's never been into those things.
Yeah, they would definitely say that.
But you were a very devout Christian at one time, and you even went to Christian college, so you're very literal when it comes to the Bible, correct?
Yes.
And you did not feel like this was any type of, but for you and myself both, because I am also very highly educated on the Bible. Not as much as you are, because obviously you went to Christian college and you know a lot more about it than I do, but I did read it all the way through. I do understand it. I've went to a bunch of different churches and stuff like that. I was very much devoted, as well as you were devoted, when we were both not just devoted, but educated. And that's a lot of people don't understand. And through my education, it kind of led me to the path of, okay, this is definitely not right. This is not correct. And you felt the same way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And because of that, you didn't feel like you could see how people would think that, easily fall into that, oh, this is some type of demonic possession that's happening to these people, to this person, or demons and the devil and all this, right? So if it's an alien entity, right, which we know we're dealing with an alien entity, we know we're pretty much narrowed it down as Draconian, that they would not pick two people who are very biblical and still stuck in old doctrine and have misconceptions of what they're actually looking at. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because my old thought process would be, well, this is all demonic, and I know it might sound weird, but it's almost more reassuring that it's other entities or other beings as opposed to like demons or whatever else. That might make sense to some people and it might not. But, growing up in church, if you've experienced that, You know what I'm saying? Because
yeah, it frightens the hell out of you because it's yeah.
it does.
People are listening right now. I'm
It
sure.
really does.
Yeah, people are listening right now. I doubt any of them are really Christians. You know, they're not stuck in the old doctrine. There's the people who are listening at this point. They're open-minded and trying to understand what's actually happening. Now, the one thing I want to bring up real fast, because first of all, there's a lot of stuff that we'll talk about, me and you, and then you'll go right to biblical stuff, and we'll start trying to crunch that out and try to figure out how that factor in with the Anunnaki and the Draconians, and we're starting to understand a lot of the way things have happened and how it was all outside entities and not from some omnipotent God with a bunch of angels. But so we had just, the other day, we just was looking up, actually I was just looking up, was there any other alien things that happened in the year 2017 when this thing happened to me? And that's when that big cigar-shaped UFO thing came into our atmosphere. And I started looking that up, and they said that it came from the Lyra constellation, the Lyra constellation. And then we found out that that constellation is a harp with a bird wrapped around it. And then you said, what about that harp and that constellation that that refers to biblical? You can
King David was known to have a lyre, which is a harp. He's also in the Bible. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, which is funny. Yeah, because that's what I said when I was talking to you, and I said the you know the Lyra constellation. I mean the Lyra constellation, and and if you look at it, and you guys can see it, I'll put a picture up here where you can see it's a harp and it has a bird, and of course we know if you follow the bird, you follow all the way back to to ancient Roman times, and you can see the bird there with, and if you follow America's bird, it's all the same. Like it just, and you follow that all the way back to Egypt, and all this stuff goes all the way back to what would be biblical text, and they're coming from, and that's because we're dealing with what? Aliens, right? Anunnaki, who represented themselves as being some angelic beings by some omnipotent God to manipulate mankind. And the stuff that happened to me in the school and with you being... So looking at that constellation with the bird, with the harp, and knowing what you do with your education in biblical terms, what did you see? You said something about the harp was like a weapon or something. You wanted to talk about that?
Yes. So it's something I'd have to look into a little bit more, but we know that on the dollar bill, you see the bird and what looks to be some type of harp. And there was a video that I watched not too long ago, and I want to say that it was put out by the History Channel. They were discussing some type of weapon that looked like a harp that was used in these different battles.
To shoot out a frequency?
Yeah, that shoots out a frequency. And obviously we know that King David played a harp or a lyre, which could be some type, and he was very successful in his reign, taking other nations down and things like that. But we don't get the full story. And also, many people are aware that there is weather warfare, and they call it harp. So, and with harp, it's emitting a frequency also to manipulate the weather. Instead of going into battle, we'll just manipulate the weather, send a hurricane or a snowstorm or whatever, and try to destroy our enemies that way.
Yeah, even though that in 1972, the government CIA ran a program called Operation Popeye, which was weather warfare, and it became a huge international thing, crisis. And in 1972 they stopped using, they said that they were going to stop using weather warfare, which was chemtrails in the sky and everything like that. So anyhow, I want to pretty much end this now. We pretty much close this out. We were just talking earlier, and I know this is a little off topic, but we were talking about the football, about the Super Bowl that just came on, and I completely forgot that when you brought up the score was 48-21 the last time they won, correct? Remember you're telling me about that?
Yes, the last time Tampa Bay Buccaneers won was 48-21.
When they won a Super Bowl. And I had just said to you earlier, before you found that out, what did I say to you?
You said, I wonder if the game, this current Super Bowl, if the score is going to be 48-21.
Symbolizing the 48. years and then
Right.
the 20. And I completely forgot that I said that. But actually, you know, when I go through my text, I'm going to have to go through my text. I'm pretty sure I said that in text. And I could probably show the time and date of when I said that was before the game was over. So,
Yes, it was.
It's just crazy how things work out. But it takes both of us. It seems like it's taking both of us to really figure out things like this and to really predict things that are happening. Showing that connection, right?
Yes, exactly. Like certain things, I'll say to you, hey, not sure if you know about this, but you probably already do. And then you're like, no, I don't. And then, you know, when you send me stuff, you're like, did you know? And I'll be like, no, I didn't. And then we'll just kind of
bounce back and forth, and then we get the answers, and then there it is.
Yep.
Right. It's insane how like our minds just completely are constantly bouncing back and forth on problems, and then the answer comes to us like right then. So it's not like it's just me having all the answers or you having all the answers, but it's been working collectively between the both of us. Like it's almost like before, like I had a lot of information and I was getting it out, but with you there, it's like having an extra processor in the computer. It's like adding an extra hard drive to make things move faster. So it's definitely helped a lot. And because of that, we're going to start doing your own videos that I'm going to start posting on this channel here. And she's also started her own channel, and we're going to be putting her videos on that channel too. So you'll be able to go back and forth to both channels until she starts getting up and running and start doing her own videos over there. So I'll be doing editing for her and helping her out, but she'll be getting out her information, which is going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be explaining about how biblical, how the biblical times and how the Bible is referring to a lot of alien interactions. And I know that we see this stuff a lot on History Channel, but it's not going to be in the way that you guys are used to seeing it. Your guys are going to see it in a different way, coming from somebody who actually had interactions with Draconian, coming from a woman who actually had interactions with most likely a reptilian being that brought you to the school. So you guys are going to be hearing from a different perspective than what you hear from pretty much the Anunnaki worshippers who are actually pushing the stuff out on History Channel, correct? Would you feel that way too? Yeah, that's what I feel as well. So all right, and with that, you wanna say it? You wanna close it out?
And with that, enjoy the rest of your time, guys.
And you heard the lady. All right, and we'll see you guys soon. We'll be putting up more videos as soon as possible. Got a lot of stuff coming your way.